to representatives from the ANZMEX Business Council by video conference?
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So we have some here and some there?
Oh, I think just one. Oh, he's obviously here. Yeah. Yeah, that's...
Okay, so Mr Ramirez, we have you physically present and the rest on the screen.
Yes, exactly. It's a large group coming, so
Okay.
just getting ready.
Ellos nos conectan. No que no esté conmigo. O sea, estamos conectados, pero ellos saben. Ya ves, Dios.
No importa.
No, tú. No, yo me corro. Yo ya hablé.
Sí.
Yo ya hablé.
No se separa.
Ya hice mi parte.
Okay, we'll welcome representatives from the ANZMEX Business Council by video conference and Mr Ramirez in person. Before we begin, I must advise you that as you are providing evidence from a foreign jurisdiction, your evidence cannot be protected by parliamentary privilege. However, you are giving evidence voluntarily and you may at any time make a request to be heard in camera. If you have any concerns, your evidence may cause you harm. For the Hansard record, could you each please state your full name and the capacity in which you appear today? Start with Mr Ramirez, if you like.
I will start. My name is Mr. Bakary Ramirez. I'm a board member of ANZMEX, the Business Council.
Someone would like to lead off the screen?
Okay, my name is Donald. Good morning. My name is Donald Small. I'm the Vice President of ANZMEX. And I'd like to just mention that I'm actually leading this group instead of Adrienne Monwick, who has had to travel for medical reasons somewhere else. So unfortunately, she can't be here.
Mr Smallwood, if other people are going to make a contribution, we just need them to introduce themselves and give their name for the Hansard reporting, and then we'll invite one or all of you to make an opening statement.
Okay, I'll start. My name is Javier Mata. I'm here as Managing Director of Steca.
Okay.
I'm also a board member of ANZMEX and leader of the international trade sector of the chamber.
Edmundo, you've already been presented. So
Correct. I have already been presented. This is Edmundo Gamas.
Okay.
Yeah. My name is Ernesto Galindo. I'm also Director of the sector for culture and education for the Chamber. And I'm the Director of Center Group, a member of the Chamber.
Okay.
My name is Hector Martinez. I'm Director for Asia and Oceania in Peru, Mexico, and a board member of ANZMEX.
Okay, now would someone like to make a brief opening statement before we go to questions?
Okay, well, let me just start off by saying that basically we're here as a voluntary body and paid personnel except an administrative assistant. We enjoy what we're doing, but we don't have any vested interest commercially in this. We're looking to try and improve or escalate the relationship, the strategic relationship of Mexico with Australia. The opportunities that we see, in our daily business or just daily work in here is that there's so much potential that hasn't been realized with relationships, and we're looking to try and raise that awareness in a couple of areas. First of all, is some higher level or more frequent higher level relations at the ministerial level, perhaps and then technocrat level, on a constant basis, not just a one-off every year or so, which has been the case in the past. This also generates over time then more constant interaction at the lower levels and then the commercial level. The Austrade group here, which works very hard to try and promote Australian business in Mexico, are very underfunded in people and in terms of money, and we think that they should be given the opportunity to have more presence here. there are many opportunities that they don't get to pursue or to prosecute because they just don't have the time. And there's some very specific programs that we think that would be very interesting for starting off. And one of them would be something, I think, what's called the Australian Week in Mexico, where it would be like a road show in the 3 or 4 major cities of Mexico every year, where the wares of Australia and the opportunities and the potential of Australia is presented to the Mexican public as well as the Mexican business community. So they're the 3 basic things: more presence, more interest at an institutional level, more people in the government area and the Australia to help push and promote, and more money to be able to help fund it. No?
Excellent. Well, as Senator Bax identified, the Mexican economy is on the march up the economic ladder, so to speak, and this committee is investigating how we can either enhance, complement, or win from that situation. So we're all on the same page, so to speak, and our challenge will be to get other people to follow our lead. But anyway, we'll work through that. So you've touched on a couple of issues, but what would be the successful outcome of the establishment of an Australia Week in Mexico? What would you literally see out of that if you had an Australia Week in Mexico? You had a greater enhancement of, what's on offer in terms of the respective 2 countries.
Yeah. Well, in terms of the Australia Week,
Yes.
we would see a business exhibit, a cultural exhibit, and also tourism to Australia.
So, I mean, would that just identify the shortcomings, though? We've heard evidence that there are only 3 medical practitioners in Mexico that can deal with biometrics, and that has implications for visas. There's no direct flights, Australia-Mexico. I mean, is that putting the cart before the horse, or do you have to do it that way?
I think we have to do it that way still. There are areas of opportunity, but at the same time, I think it's really important to promote Australia and Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah, for example, the flight issue, that's a commercial decision to create flights, and Qantas is probably not going to be leading that in the short term because they have the US business. So it might have to be a Mexican carrier, and creating the awareness around Australia Week creates more interest by them to be able to take a decision to actually make these flights.
Well, I think Qantas do fly to Buenos Aires, isn't it? They do have a direct South American flight.
Yes, but Buenos Aires is really far. It's 9 hours from Mexico.
Okay. That's no help then.
No, not really.
No worries. So,
Most people go through Los Angeles.
yeah, exactly. So, how do we actually, I mean, you're obviously a professional organisation. You've obviously had these conversations with the department, Austrade, and respective entities that you come into contact with. What advice do you have for the committee in terms of recommendations to enhance the case for what you're promoting?
Well, if I can ask that one.
Yes.
One of the main focus that we are taking out of this is collaboration and having a strategic direction. We have seen that there are efforts from different industries and different players from Australia and to Mexico just to engage and to grow the relationship. But unfortunately, they are going to different places and different directions. So if we're going to allocate some additional resources, and that's part of what ANZMEX is doing, we're just trying to find some points that we can actually work together. And I think the Australian Week, going to that point back, is a really good initiative because we will bring all the business and all the areas that are interested in Australia and in Mexico to be together. It will bring awareness of what can Australia would represent for Mexico, and it will be able just to expand that network that already exists from a business point of view. So to summarize, I think that we are looking for some direction and some strategic point of view for everybody.
Well, to some extent, where we've just completed the Japanese Economic Partnership, the Korean Free Trade Agreement, the China-Australia Free Trade Agreement, the Trade Minister's now working on India. we're a bit of an outlier when we sort of point out that Mexico is, a leading economic contender for advancement. So we really do need to get your best advice on how to present this to get some attention in the right spot. So, Senator Back.
Yes, thank you. Mr Marta, can I ask, are you the Mr Javier Marta that was involved with Ferrez in
Indeed.
Western Australia?
Indeed, I am. Offices out of Fremantle.
So the last time you and I saw each other, we were pushing sheep and cattle up the deck of the Danny F in Fremantle Harbour when your father, Captain Rodolfo Marta, in fact, was in charge of Ferrez Rural.
That's indeed the case. What would that be, 86, 87?
85, 86, 87, 88. I remember, Mr Marta, that I seemed to work harder than you did. I just put that on the record, that I'm just not sure whether your administrative duties took you into the shade on those hot sunny days or not.
It's absolutely true, and I don't deny it for 1 minute.
It's great to speak to you. I just said to the Secretary that we both have changed over time, and I didn't recognise you, but from your name you had to be that person, and I think your father has passed away, but I just want to say to you what a great man he was.
Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it.
Now, gentlemen, not often does a committee of the Australian Senate receive a submission that's got 39 recommendations. So
That's usually our job.
it's usually our job, but can I just, in making that comment, can I just thank you for the degree to which you have addressed yourselves on the issues that you see as important. Following on from the Chairman's question, I'm keen to know where you see the benefits would be to Mexico, Australia and the relationship in the event that the Trans-Pacific Partnership is ratified, please.
You want to try that or? Maybe each one of us can say something here. There's specific industries where we think can take advantage of a relationship. Mining is one of them. Infrastructure development is another. Agriculture. The whole of the northern part of Australia, especially the Queensland area, has a climate almost the same as a lot of parts of Mexico. And in terms of livestock, in terms of fruit, vegetables, also horticulture, many different areas of agriculture, technology. Australia's got a lot of technology that Mexico could take advantage of, just for example, commercial trade too, in terms of fruit and vegetables. I mean, for example, avocados is one. I know that's a very ticklish issue for some people because Mexico produces 35% of the world's avocados and the cost is relatively cheap, but there's times in Australia where there possibly could be some sort of trade made. Just some examples I made. I guess you've got some ideas too.
Yeah, I guess for me the issue that's very important is awareness. There's very little awareness of the business community in Australia about Mexico's potential and vice versa. I think a lot of the problems that we have in selling the concept of Mexico as a very, very interesting potential market is the fact that people are just not aware of the potential that Mexico has. And some of the resources that are being suggested at this table, in my view, need to go towards making the Australian business community aware of the potential in Mexico. And as an organisation that represents not only Mexico but New Zealand and Australia, it also works the other way. We need to make people in Mexico aware of the potential of Australia as a business partner. Today, the focus in Mexico is the US. 80% of trade in Mexico goes to the US. And so there's a real interest in the part of Mexico to diversify. I think we need to concentrate on that. And to do that, we just need to make people aware of the potential.
And making people aware usually involves trips, travel, some sort of forced relationship where people can talk about the potential. The awareness thing is probably the single biggest barrier that we have with it right now. Yes. Do you want to say something about the cultural education?
Yeah. In terms of awareness in particular, like one of the things that we wanted to do, and one of the recommendations was made, was to fund more the Australian Embassy in Mexico so that they could run more cultural events so that people could be aware of Australia, because that's very important. I think we, as Mexicans, we can be very ignorant about Australia. And I think it's a good opportunity, if you cannot travel, for example, to be able to watch what Australia is about, because that's going to be the first step in getting the awareness.
This is Edmundo Gamas. I'm speaking here as board member of ANZMEX and leader of the finance and infrastructure sector. And I would just like to add to what my colleagues have said, that I think that there's vast potential in the automotive and aerospace industries, where Australian companies are already present in Mexico in large numbers. Some arrive directly, and some by purchasing companies in the United States with substantial Mexican operations. And another area where I think there is definitely great scope and very unexplored is professional services of many kinds, legal, financial, engineering, and especially the health sector, where Australia is also very advanced. And Mexico has much to learn as it restructures its national health provision.
I'm going to say something real fast. I think it's incredible that from 2004, we were talking about a trade of almost $700 million. And 10 years after, we're talking about $1.5 billion. And that's what a lot of challenges that we were just discussing right now, with the lack of direct flights, with the distance and so on. So imagine the potential, the things that we can actually do if we bring a lot more awareness. I think the main challenge that we have right now is a lack of information. So something like this, and the support of ANZMEX and support of the Chamber, can definitely help to bring a lot more Australia to Mexico and a lot more Mexico to Australia.
If I can just go down to the specific industry for a moment, and that's with regard to agriculture. It has been put to the committee in submissions that Australia's import risk analysis process for agricultural products is a barrier. Time taken for consideration of market access in request for products such as your avocados, table grapes, limes. Obviously, Mr. Marta is well aware of Australia's obsession with retaining our sort of hopefully clean green image when it comes to agricultural and related pests. Is this an area that your group sees as being an area requiring improvement, is in the import risk analysis space?
Absolutely. Obviously, there's some vested, in this type of dynamic, there's vested interest at both levels, at both sides. And sometimes that has a tendency to delay things or make the process slower. The other side of it is, as Javier was mentioning earlier on to us, is it's just that it's not a priority. The priority might be China, Japan, other countries, and then Mexico becomes a lower priority, so it always goes to the bottom of the pile. To fix that usually requires these other things we were talking about, which is more interest and more champions involved in the specific areas.
Just on that, is the biosecurity, say, between Mexico and the US much different to the biosecurity checks Mexico-Australia? Do you have a problem with that?
I think the big difference, of course, is that there is a land border between the two countries, as opposed to Australia's status as an island that is able to protect its integrity a lot better than having land borders, as is the case here. Often the negotiations between Australia and Mexico on biosecurity issues are very much, let's be kind with this, very much watched by Washington. So what we do with Australia from Mexico in the specific case of my industry. So if I import livestock from Australia to Mexico, Washington will be watching and having a direct impact on the outcome of those negotiations, because the risk is somehow related to them. There's a land border. And also the US traditionally has used Mexico as its buffer. So below Mexico, there is a lot of land with a lot of diseases, and so the US invests in a way in Mexico to make sure that Mexico is its filter to remain clean. I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Yeah, no, it's very informative. I mean, because we do see American table grapes, for example, in Australia when they're out of season. So we do get fruit from California. And so it's a short step to getting avocados from Mexico, I'd imagine.
Well, 50% of the Mexican avocado industry is now exported to the US.
Oh.
And it took a long time. It took actually 90 years for the US to actually take away the barriers that they had set. And you know, we can all speculate on the reasons, but the NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, forced the issue to become more sensitive. And from 1998 on, basically the Mexican avocado, but there are a lot of restrictions, and there has to be a lot of auditing on these processes. You know, I mean, the U.S. Agricultural Ministry has maybe 100 people working in Mexico full time on making sure that all of the requirements are met. You know? So, I mean, there's obviously an investment required in there, but yes, the avocado industry can export now straight to the U.S. because it follows those requirements. You know, and it happens with tomatoes. It happens with. I mean, there's a lot of. There's $1.4 billion of avocados are now sold to the U.S. Tomatoes are about the same. I mean, there's a lot of fruit. It's becoming the garden of the U.S. to a great extent too, because it's all year-round production. And that leads to another point. There's a lot of agricultural industries in Australia that perhaps could even take advantage of investing in Mexico to sell to the U.S. There's a little bit like the automotive industry, which is what's happening at one. But no, these companies are coming here not to sell to Mexicans, to sell to the US and Canada.
Correct.
So that's a very interesting. So it's your view that it's possible to use the Mexican marketplace to gain access and greater penetration to the US and other markets?
Totally, absolutely. It's happening now. The automotive industry does it. Just for starters, you know.
And how will the Trans-Pacific Partnership, will that facilitate that, or will it enhance that opportunity?
I don't know.
I think it'll enhance the possibility on certain products that could be processed in Mexico, brought from Australia, processed or value added in Mexico and exported to the US.
Because of the rules of origin.
Because of the rules of origin. But certainly, I mean, many countries in Europe are using Mexico as the launching pad towards the US. I think Australia and New Zealand are lagging behind a little bit on that, on seizing that opportunity.
I think it's very clear in Australia that our success in Asia, in trading terms, in military exchange and political exchange, has been a successful sort of undergraduate program where people have taken advantage of study in Australia and vice versa. What are the impediments to developing that further in Australia and Mexico's relationship?
I can answer that. Education related?
Yeah.
Yes, well, basically, sorry, can I?
Sir, yes, Karen, go ahead.
Yep. Well, Mexico is an open market, which is great. But unfortunately, we had a restriction in terms of the academic qualifications that Mexican students will have. We do have at high school level a year 12, similar to other countries in South America, like for instance, Colombia. But unfortunately, there hasn't been a formal agreement between the Australian government and the Mexican government just to standardize the system. So that has been a limitation because Mexican students who want to undertake an undergraduate program here in Australia, they need to go through a foundation study or a pathway program. And because that's not the common way of going to university in Mexico, that has been seen as a resistance to come to Australia. So knowing that there is evidence that, for instance, Australia has an agreement with the Colombian government and they managed to standardize the system, we think that there will be a possibility to do the same. Especially, we need to assess if there is a qualification equivalence, but we will see that that will be a great way just to grow the market for an undergraduate level, definitely.
So how long does something like that take to negotiate? I mean, how long did it take Colombia?
It took a couple of months. It was actually the Colombian government, mainly here, the embassy in Canberra, talking to the Department of Education and just putting everything on the table. Right. And because we do have the year 12 system, it was just a matter of just checking what kind of units students were taking and just trying just to see if there is some sort of reconciliation. So as far as I know, it was a couple of months of intense discussion, but it was actually a very quick fix.
So it was a sort of educational biosecurity issue, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I think at the end of the day, it was more about the willing of talk to each other and trying to resolve the issues. So.
Okay. Senator Back.
Yes, if I can stay in that education space, you've made some recommendations with regard to extending the new Colombo plan, which is something I've been in the ear of the Foreign Minister on for some time, an education counsellor. It seems to me there are significant opportunities for liaison between Mexican universities and Australian universities, especially in the energy space. I know there's a significant number of Mexican students travel to the United States and/or Canada each year. I think PEMEX is being required to establish a PEMEX university as part of the reform process. But I'm just wondering, apart from those points you make about an education counsellor in the embassy in Mexico City, how else can we get closer liaison between relevant Australian universities and Mexican universities?
Yeah, well, following what you mentioned about the oil reform, the Mexican government has a very, very strong and interesting scholarship program. What they are trying is just to bring up the level of professionals for that industry. So a good example that is in Mexico is what they did with the German and the French government, which basically the French and the German government are bringing a language programs for Mexican professionals, like for Germans to go to Germany and in French to go to France. There are about 100 scholarships available. And as a result of that, the Mexican government will bring full scholarship for students to do postgraduate degrees in any university that is recognized in Germany and France. So a similar program could be something that will be interesting for Australia. It will bring more students to come here, but also it will show that there is this idea of connect with Mexico, definitely.
And is language a barrier, Mr. Ramirez?
In some areas of Mexico it is, and that's something that it has been raised by the Ministry of Education from the federal government in Mexico. Students who go to private universities in Mexico, they have no problems with language, but if they go to public universities, they may have that problem. So it could be an opportunity for everybody just to raise those capabilities, definitely.
And then my last question, realise time's against us, but visa restrictions for people coming from Mexico to Australia, whether it's for studying or for recreation or tourism, are there difficulties, and can we improve the speed with which visas are applied for and accepted?
Yeah, unfortunately, recently we noticed that it has been a big delay in the processing of visas. We used to have student visas to be processed in between 2 and 3 weeks, and now it's taking up to 7 weeks. We don't know what was the problem or what's happening behind that. We know that there is an issue in terms of the numbers of doctors that are available in the country.
Yes.
For a population of 100 million, we only have 3 registered doctors. And one is not even in one of the main cities, it's just in one of the small towns. So that is definitely a restriction for everybody. So if we could actually enhance that, that would be great, actually.
Good, thank you. Thanks very much.
That's not only for students, it's for business people. Well, it's a problem.
Okay, well, look, thanks very much for your excellent submission and your contributions here today. We are on a very tight timetable, so thank you again for your appearances and your contribution. We'll now move to...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
very much.
Oh, they're here, are they?
That's those two.